Hi, this is Dr. Tom Rogers at Performance Medicine. 5 at 5, actually it's 5:30, but every Tuesday evening we take 5 questions from people that are either patients or just have read some of the blogs or listened to my podcast, and we try to answer them. These are questions that I really don't have a lot of preparation for, so hopefully you'll get a good, direct, honest answer. Kind of off the cuff. But in any event, I hope you're having a great week. We have 5 questions here today. Question number 1. This is a long one. I'm glad that you touched on intermittent fasting. I have been doing this religiously since the end of February. I typically stay on a 9 to 5 or 12 to 4 schedule that varies no more than 16-8 on rare days. I stick strictly to black coffee, unsweetened herbal tea, and water during fasting. My trouble is that I haven't had any positive changes. I've actually gained some weight and I'm still fatigued and have trouble getting up in the mornings. I still eat responsibly and stay close to the autoimmune diet each day. My thyroid tests have come back regular, so I'm really not sure what to do next. This has been discouraging. Okay, this is a great question, and it's actually a patient that I really like to see. First of all, if you're on an autoimmune diet, I'll need to know what kind of autoimmune condition that you have. Is your gut working right? You know, a lot of times if we don't balance that microbiome in your gut, nothing tends to work very well. There's so many factors that come into play with fatigue and weight gain, which is mostly what I deal with every day, that you got to kind of dig into it a little bit. Now, I like the intermittent fasting, and when they talk about a 19 to 5 or 20 to 4, that's 19 hours of fasting with a 5-hour eating window. So that's what they're talking about there, which is a pretty good, definitely on a 20 to 4 schedule, most people will lose weight and feel better. However, what you eat during that window does make a difference. You're on an autoimmune diet, which can be a pretty strict diet. Typically, I like to tell people if they're doing the intermittent fasting that, during that window that you eat, you can actually eat a little looser than you would on a real strict, say like keto diet or an autoimmune diet. So you may kind of play around with that a little bit. And actually, I find that if you do intermittent fasting, which will throw you into ketosis temporarily, that you can kind of eat a few carbs during the eating window. As a matter of fact, I like you to kind of mix it up. It may be that you're eating the same thing and you don't mix it up a little bit. The whole idea about intermittent fasting is to kind of trick your body into not adapting and entering homeostasis where everything's the same. When you do that, your metabolism automatically slows down. So play around with the types of foods you're eating during that window. The other thing is, if you're not having success with that, you may try up or down days. By that I mean on the days of the week, say you get a 2-5 schedule or a 3-4, that means 2-5 would mean 2 days a week you're fasting, 5 days a week you're not fasting at all. So in other words, you'd go the whole 24 hours without eating anything, just black coffee, black tea, unsweetened, or water, and nothing else. And then the other days when you're not fasting, you can kind of eat what you want. And as a matter of fact, you can kind of overfeed on the days after your fasting days. So that may work out better for you than the actual 12-4, 19 to 5 schedule. So you could try that. You're fatigued as well, so there's a lot of other reasons for being tired. You say your thyroid tests are normal. They may be normal, but they may not be optimal. We need to look at your adrenals. We need to look at your insulin resistance, vitamin levels, sleep patterns, I mean, there's hormone levels. I don't know how old you are, but you need to look at your hormone levels as well, and to see where you are in that. I need to see where your fat is accumulating, if it's on your thighs, if it's on your abdomen. And so there's a lot of different factors to look at. I need to look at your inflammatory markers to see if you're too inflamed. I mean, I see some people, especially women, that work out too much, and it actually backfires on them. They're constantly tired or hurting or inflamed. I tell them to back off on their workouts. So, it seems to me that you need to kind of get some more lab work done probably, and experiment with the different variations of the intermittent fasting diet. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's an answer here for you. So if you're having a problem, don't hesitate to come in and get some lab work and talk to one of us at Performance Medicine, and we'll try to help you, because there's an absolute answer somewhere. But anyway, so I hope that answered your question. Question number 2, can testosterone cause weight gain in women? It could. Testosterone, which is, like I talked about the last few weeks, is an absolute female hormone. I had a lady just today that told me her gynecologist does not want females on testosterone. And yet her libido's in the tank. She feels terrible, can't build muscle. She's tired all the time. Absolutely, females need testosterone just as bad as men do, just a lot lower dose. As a matter of fact, it's the most bioactive hormone in a female's body. So if you don't look at that, you're really shortchanging yourself. Sometimes in women, I'll choose just to use DHEA to pop the testosterone level up. But usually I use a bioidentical testosterone. Testosterone builds muscle, which per volume weighs more than fat. I mean, a pound of muscle is about that big. A pound of fat's about this big. So volume-wise, so don't pay attention to the scale so much as you do what's happening to your waistline and your body fat percentage. So, usually I see it giving you more energy, giving you more muscle, which burns fat. I suppose technically it could, but it's muscle weight. And what you're trying to do is decrease your body fat stores, especially around your waist and hips. It's another great reason for intermittent fasting. But, done right, testosterone makes women feel great. So something's a little bit off there. So you got to look at the other causes of weight gain too. There's a lot of complexities to it. So come in and we'll check all your hormone levels. Sometimes I'll check if you're converting some of your testosterone to more estrogen or into dihydrotestosterone. So sometimes you got to look into it a little bit further. So complex. Number 3, how do you know if your thyroid is normal versus optimal? Where do you want your thyroid numbers to be? That's a great question. It relates back to the first question I answered. There's a huge difference between normal and optimal. Normal is such a huge range that it really doesn't mean a lot, because you're measuring on that bell curve from the average population, which in the first place is a sick population. It's not even a healthy curve. So I tend to like to get on the high normal side, which will be the optimal level. And you need to see whether your free T3 is looking good. That's the active form of hormone, and that's the one I look at the most. So you want it optimal. I like to drive the TSH, really suppress it below 1. And I like to get the free T3 up in the high normal range, which is different depending on which lab you get. So I'm not going to give you a number here, but come in and get that checked. And there's a lot of other things that influence thyroid, like insulin levels, cortisol levels, and your gut as well. So yeah, a lot of difference between normal and optimal. Shoot for optimal. Question 4, how often should you get your insulin levels checked? Well, it just depends on at baseline, if you're having a problem with your weight or you're a diabetic, of course I want to get a baseline fasting insulin and maybe even a non-fasting insulin. A lot of times that'll tell me more than a fasting insulin. Say, and I'm not talking about sugar levels here, I'm talking about insulin levels, and not hemoglobin A1C, but an actual insulin level. That tells me whether or not you're insulin resistant. And so I'll always get a baseline insulin level to see where you are. That'll tell me if you're struggling with your weight. Remember, insulin's a fat storing hormone. It tells me whether you're going to be a fat burner or fat storer. And you want to be a fat burner. So you want to get your insulin levels low, and then you deplete your glycogen stores from your liver, and boom, you're burning your own body's fat. That's the whole thing about intermittent fasting. So, really just depends on how you're doing, what your sugars are doing, how your weight's doing. I like to get a baseline, and sometimes I'll recheck it in a couple months to see where you're at. And again, I like to check a fasting, and I like to check it an hour or two after you've eaten a meal. And that tells me a lot about your insulin sensitivity, and can be a great test to help me aid in getting you leaner, because I use a lot of insulin sensitizers to get your insulin level down. And then we can talk about turning your body into a fat burner. Insulin is the key hormone with this. All right, last question. Is IgG food sensitivity testing a one-time test, or does that change? That's a great question, because it can change. I've checked mine out at different times, a couple years apart, and sometimes they change because that microbiome in your gut changes a little bit. So you could have some food sensitivities, and that's what an IgG level is. It's a delayed food sensitivity. In other words, you eat a food and 2 days later you feel brain fog, fatigue, you can't figure out why you can't lose weight. A lot of times it's food allergies, and it's not the kind of IgE reaction that causes you to eat a peanut or a shellfish and you're immediately going anaphylaxis. This is delayed, so it's kind of hard to tell unless you get the blood test for this to see if it's causing a problem. And what I do when I get a baseline on somebody that suspects they may have a problem, and put them on a strict avoidance diet of those foods, and then while I'm balancing their gut with prebiotics, probiotics, cutting out glutens, dairy, etc., and then I can refeed their gut microbiome and get their gut not leaky, and then we can reintroduce some of those foods. But yeah, it could change depending on which lab you use. Sometimes there's a little variance in that. I've tested many of them. I usually use a Dunwoody or Alcat, but there's others out there that work. So yeah, it could change over years. And what we try to do is look at the foods you can tolerate. And remember, that's just a guide. I go more by how you're feeling clinically than an absolute lab test on anything we do. But lab testing certainly is very helpful. So yeah, it can change. So look at your weight, look at your energy levels, look at the kind of food you're eating. Stay away from inflammatory foods. In general, those are sugar, glutens, dairy, corn, soy. A lot of times even nightshade vegetables like tomatoes, white potatoes, peppers, eggplant. Those are nightshades. And a lot of people are very inflammatory. So if you just don't feel right, the first thing you need to look at is what you're eating, because your health really kind of starts with what you put in your mouth. But anyway, I hope that helped you. These are great questions. Keep them coming every week at Tuesday. You can just email them or just call in and ask them. We'll try to do our best to give you a good answer. And if you need consult or testing, just feel free to come in the office. I hope you're having a great week. It's a beautiful day out there. We'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you.